Today, nylon string guitar versus steel string guitar. Nylon's better.
I don't know about that.
We'll see. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music. My name's Chris McKee.
I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure to visit our Teespring store linked below for our custom designed t-shirts to make you look snazzy. So, Cooper, I think nylon strings are better for someone starting out on guitar.
That's a fair point.
I think it's the right one.
I think you're wrong.
Okay.
I'm going to go with steel string. I think it's better to start off with, but I'd love to hear your argument.
All right, well, we're going to debate this for you. If you have been in the market, maybe on your first guitar or early on, or you're just looking for something that's easier on the fingers, then you should already know right off the bat that the nylon string is the one you should get. And you should ignore everything Cooper says from here on out. And I'll tell you why. Nylon strings are easier to play. Also, nylon strings are easier to play, followed by nylon strings are easier to play. Because nylon strings are nylon, they have a larger diameter. Okay, there's not something really small that's digging into your like newly forming calluses. There's less tension, so they're easier to push down on the fretboard. Fretboards are typically flat, so there's no curvature or anything, which can make it really easy for single note stuff. And it's real easy on this hand too. So if you want to play it, strum it or anything, it's easy. And they sound nice. They have a nice warm tone to them, and you can pretend to be Willie Nelson. So
Which I love to do all the time. So.
Yeah, or his son.
Lucas.
Yes.
Yes.
So those are all the reasons I think nylon strings are probably better for someone starting out.
I think that's fair. They're definitely more comfortable to the untrained hand, or the untrained fingertips. However, inherently with a nylon string, you're going to have a wider nut.
That's true.
So, I mean, you're going to be wrapping, you're going to be trying to search for those strings. They're spaced apart more. I just noticed this while looking at it, but oftentimes a nylon string will not have fret markers.
That's true. Well, sometimes this one does on the side, but nothing on the front.
Nothing on the front. Sometimes you need those reference points,
Of course.
especially. What?
This is free, just for everybody, because I'll see comments of like, that inlay confuses me. You're not supposed to play guitar like this.
All right.
Well, I mean, if it's an ovation and you've got a bit of a belly, it may happen. but yeah, you're supposed to look on the side. But to fairness,
yes,
there are some very traditional classical guitars that have nothing.
Yes.
Because you're supposed to be that good.
You're supposed to be great. Not to mention, with the wider nut on a typical classical guitar, most acoustics, including this FSX 800C, are going to have a more narrow nut width. They're going to have a little more comfortable neck carve, neck contour.
Thinner necks,
Thinner
sure.
neck. And in my opinion, it might be nice if you're very interested in learning how to play guitar, you want to get into it, you might as well start off with something that's going to really hammer your fingertips, build those calluses quick. It's going to hurt, but you're going to be able to kind of build that up, build up an immunity. It's like kind of like a Dread Pirate Roberts kind of thing.
That's just like a politician way of saying it's good that it hurts.
It's good that it hurts.
It's like a John Cougar Mellencamp without the cougar. He's just John Mellencamp now, right?
Well, yes.
But does it still hurt so good?
It hurts so good. Little pink houses for you and me. I think, I would encourage somebody to learn an acoustic guitar before an electric, because it's going to make it easier for you to transfer over to electric than vice versa. That's just my own thought.
The notes are the same, though. But, I mean, I guess it feels a little bit more similar.
Yeah. Well, I think more just in terms of comfortability and everything, it's going to be a little bit harder for a beginner to nail chords and scales on an acoustic guitar than your typical electric guitar, based on the nature of that neck and all of that. So I think starting off with something that's going to train your hand in a certain way, that trains your hand in a different way.
Yeah, there's a traditional school of thought that if you're learning guitar, you should learn classical. That's a very traditional school of thought.
It's a classical school.
It's a classical school of thought, and that you should sit upright and you should play it accordingly. And that's actually how I started.
On tom?
I started on top. It was a really bad classical guitar, so it didn't feel much better to the fingers. But that is how I started.
Yeah.
And there is a benefit actually to dealing with the wider net and the thicker neck, is that you do gain, I think, a little bit more dexterity in your hands, so that when you then go to a steel string guitar like this, or an electric guitar, which is even easier to play because of how light gauge the strings are in comparison, you've kind of have some more dexterity. You can reach across more frets, things like that. I do find, and let's see if you argue with me on this, it's easier to go from classical to acoustic and electric than to go from acoustic electric to a classical guitar.
I think it's easier to pick up bad habits on a steel string acoustic guitar.
Well, and the stretch, like,
Yeah.
how many people then look for, you know this, I know this, guys will look for a kind of hybrid nylon string guitar, something that's nylon string, but is set up a little bit more like a steel string guitar, because they cannot stretch over that 2-inch nut because they didn't start there.
Yeah, that's true. On the other hand, there's a lot of guys that come in and they're like, well, what tailor has a 3-inch nut? Like, how can I get the thickest nut width? And it's crazy to see somebody that maybe started on there really prefers,
the wider,
closer to 2-inch.
Maybe that's why I like a 1 3/4 inch nut width typically,
I
and
like
I'm
that
fine
too.
on like a 1 7/8. I'm okay on that stuff.
Yeah, I like a wider. I think there's a nice in between. However, that's the mechanics of playing these guitars. Which one will be more versatile?
Well, other than playing classical gas or Willie Nelson stuff, I'll give you that.
I think, it's encouraging when you play a song that you want to learn on a guitar that sounds like the song you want to learn.
But you can sound like a spaghetti western on this,
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
That's cool. So
I think there's something to be said about more songs that people are probably trying to learn when they're getting started have been played or recorded on steel strings.
Well, I'll give you several pros, I think, that I will confess to on steel string. One, I think if you're wanting to strum, steel string makes more sense.
Yeah.
You can strum a classical guitar, with your thumb or with your nails or whatever, but taking a pick to a classical guitar for me has always felt weird.
Yeah.
You're just doing something wrong. And so I think in that regard, that's definitely more versatile. Because of the steel strings and the higher tension and whatnot. I think it's louder, that's for sure, and that's why they were invented, by the way. This was guitar, and then we needed more volume, right? So that's why steel string guitars came around. It is a narrower neck, it's a thinner neck, I'll give you that, but the strings are higher tension, they are thinner, and they tend to be a little bit more difficult to push down because there's more tension on them. There is a little bit more versatility also in options.
Yeah.
Most classical guitars are cedar top. Some are spruce, soft spruce, like European spruce. And this is a Cordoba with a cutaway like yours, like your Yamaha, and it's got a pickup like you have. But I don't know, it seems like there's probably overall fewer manufacturers and options on nylon string guitars.
Yeah.
Maybe that just means they figured it out first.
Also, I'd say that there are a lot of great value nylon string guitars, but a lot of times going up to more of like a professional grade, it is a huge jump in price.
Talking about professional, like classical guitars, is like talking about cellos and other orchestral instruments.
Yeah.
You could buy numerous custom shop electric guitars for the price of like one really nice classical guitar.
Other thing is, if you're just getting started, it might be easier for you to learn how to conduct restrings on a ball end steel string guitar. I still mess up on tie off. It's something that takes a good amount of practice.
Yeah.
And
both sides of this can be complicated. I'll give you that. There's no arguing. It's easier to restring a steel string guitar. How about this? I'll give you another one. Just a bonus for you. It's easier to bend. Actually, let's not say it's easier. It's possible.
You can bend. Yeah.
So if you're wanting to play anything bluesy, or that just requires the bend of a note, you can actually do that. Whereas on this, it just kind of goes a little flat or a little sharp.
Yeah.
That's all that really happens. So, but one of the nice things about a classical guitar that I find is that it responds to a light touch, right? With the less tension, it's a very lightly braced top. It's usually softwood like cedar. You can play very almost effortlessly, which is good when you're starting, and get a lot of volume and that kind of really rich, warm tone out of a classical guitar.
Yes. And
See?
just
Yes.
another pro on a nylon string guitar. Well, this goes for both of these, that you can only get that tone out of this or that. There's something about a classical guitar tone that has somewhat of like a warmth and sweetness and something very attractive to the sound that you can really only get out of nylon strings. There are a lot of maybe harsh tones that come from maybe overplaying a steel string or not putting enough into it to where you're not getting a good clear tone out of it. But with a light touch or a heavy touch on a nylon string, when played well, it's always going to sound very beautiful and classic.
Yeah, they do. Sometimes they can be more susceptible to buzz.
Yeah.
There is adjustability. This one actually has a truss rod. Cordoba usually puts that in there, but there's a lot of classical guitars that don't. So you can't adjust the relief in the neck like you can with a steel string. But you said something a second ago that just made me think of something that I want to make sure people watching this video understand. It's one or the other. If you buy a steel string guitar, you are gifted a steel string guitar, and you want to have nylon strings instead. That's not gonna work. And the reason is because the tuners and the nut filings and even the bridge are all designed for steel strings. It's designed for the ball end of the steel string. It's designed for the diameter of those strings. Putting nylon strings is going to be problematic if you're able to even get them on and secure, but then the whole guitar is braced for that higher tension. So if you actually somehow manage to put nylon strings on a steel string guitar, when you go to play, it's going to sound like a cardboard box.
Yeah.
Or that blue guitar that I reviewed from Amazon. You can watch that video and see what I'm talking about. And in that video, they actually put steel string guitars on a classical, which is also a no-no.
And even worse horror story.
Yeah, worse. And we've seen people do this too. Do not put steel string guitars on a classical guitar unless you really, really don't like the guitar and you want to see it slowly implode on itself over time.
Yeah.
Hopefully while you're not playing it. So.
Yeah, that's a bad call.
But on their own, not doing those things that you shouldn't do, they are both great options for guitar.
Yeah.
I think the traditional method is I think you do get a lot of benefits, particularly on your fingers and the dexterity that you build up over time with this. I've really always been a fan of that warm, dark tone that you get out of the nylon strings. And it can be pretty versatile in some of the stuff you're playing with it. But I will admit that particularly if you are wanting to play certain genres of music, you should bypass this altogether. You should grab your steel string guitar and benefit from some of the things that you've talked about on there.
Yeah. They both kind of strengthen your hand in different ways.
They do.
It's nice to have both if you are able.
That reminds me of that meme, right? Which one? Both? Both? Both. So there you have it. At the end of this video, we've answered this question. Should you get a nylon string guitar or a steel string guitar? Yes. And on that disappointing conclusion, which one did you start with? You had a steel string?
I actually started on a nylon string.
So?
It was a little half size, no name.
It wasn't Tom?
It wasn't Tom. It didn't even have a name. I named it Joey. That was my name for it. But that was my first guitar, and then I went straight from that to a Stratocaster. So I did everything wrong, but
and yet you still somehow learned how to play half decently.
Yeah. I did like playing on nylon because I was like just turned 7, and it was really easy on my hands. But it was also tiny, so I didn't necessarily have that giant. I wasn't learning on this. But pretty soon after that, I moved to like taking lessons on a steel string acoustic, and that, gets your calluses up.
It does. My beginnings have been very well documented here. I had a terrible classical guitar, and then I had a series of electrics and borrowed acoustics and stuff. And, in that is a bombshell of a conclusion. Sometimes you just learn on whatever you can get your hands on, and if you really want to learn, you will learn.
Yeah.
But if you've got choices, hopefully this helps you understand which one might appeal to you. And I think in everyone's arsenal, you should, if you are a serious guitar player, have one of each of these at least.
Yeah, they're both worth having.
Well, there you have it. Should you start with acoustic, steel string, or nylon string? Really, it depends upon you. There are benefits. There's a pros and cons to either one. You should just get both and get it from alamomusic.com. So at the end of the day, the very best guitar in the world is a nylon string.
No.
Steel string.
Just all of them. They're all good.
It's whatever you're making music on. Learning guitar, that's what we want to encourage you to do. If you're new to our channel, make sure that you subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos, comment below, tell us your first guitar story. Was it a Tom? Was it a really bad guitar? I feel like I'm making fun of people named Tom. It's not intentional. It's just what the guitar was named. Blame Tom.
You did it.
But what was your first guitar? Was it Tom, or was it like the very best? Did you just luck out and someone handed you a great guitar? My Tom was followed up by a borrowed Yamaha, and that was followed up by a really ugly red Ovation that was falling apart. So.
Were you looking at the fret dots?
I had no choice after I got a bit of a belly. It just kind of turned.
It's a slide at that point.
Anyways, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Once again, you guys, thank you very much for watching. If you want to learn more about the guitar, check out Alamo Music. Oh, Pat.
Hey everybody, I love guitar videos just like you do. But guess what? Alamo Music Center has another YouTube channel. You can check out all the piano and keyboard reviews that we have and see more of me. Cooper, do we have another one of those? He's fine.